Live in the weekly Trampled Underfoot podcast show with your hosts, Mark Lindsay and Eloy Escajedo. And welcome all. What's going on, Mark?
Oh, I'm just sitting here jamming to the band in my head. I got to get charged up for these, man. So half the time when you come into the green room, I'm sitting here. I've been listening to something, Billy Idol or something like that. Just getting my getting pumped up for it, getting ready for it.
Dancing with myself.
Rebel Yell,
Oh,
Rebel Yell this time.
how about Culture Club? Do you really want to hurt me? Have you seen The Wedding Singer?
Yes, I do actually. No, I haven't.
You got to see that movie. Well, I don't know if you're gonna like it, but so
Yeah,
The
I'm not
Wedding.
much for Adam Sandler. Never have been.
Well, okay, so The Wedding Singer is that he's a wedding singer, and they're not
Mhm.
very good.
Yeah.
His band. And so in that he's got a keyboard player that is totally Culture Club prepared, like they're they're there. And so the band's playing all the music at weddings, but then that person gets their time to shine in the light.
Hmm.
And so that person always picks Culture Club's "Do You Really?" And so he starts and he's standing there and the lights and says "Oh, oh, oh," and it's so fragile and like you just want to, and it's hilarious. It's part of the gag in the thing.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's funny.
Nope, never seen it. I've never been much for Adam Sandler. I mean, I don't know, just not my cup of tea. So,
He's a little, he could be a little bit too much or a
yeah.
lot too much.
Well, now that brings about an interesting point because what I do is I come in and I find a music video, something raucous and rock and rollish and things like that. And just to kind of pump myself up and get ready. Do you have any pre-show, pre-podcast rituals that you do?
I do 10 jumping jacks and sing and I sing the Kama Sutra backwards.
You sing the Kama Sutra back. You don't just read it, you sing it.
I
Wow.
sing it backwards and then I lather myself in high intensity petroleum jelly Vaseline. I run around strip naked around the block 3 times, and when I
Three
return
times.
I wash off with a hose and here I am.
Okay. Hey, well, we all have our little things that we do to get us pumped up and ready to go.
No, I don't have any rituals.
Oh man. Yeah, see, I got to get myself jazzed up for this. Because today I made a horrible mistake. Those of you who follow us on Facebook and are wondering, what the hey, man? Normally I post a promo over there and on Facebook, both on my own timeline, and I tag Eloy in it, and I post it over in the Harneo Media group, Facebook group.
High yield petroleum jelly, by the way.
I yield.
I don't even
Wow.
know what that means, but
Yeah, I don't. I'm trying to figure out what petroleum jelly could yield other than slipperiness. But this is how my brain. This is my brain on Mark. I'm thinking if you put it on the soles of your feet, you don't have to make that many strides because you can just, you know, almost
it's
like roller skates.
that's such a twisting of diamonds on the soles of her feet by of her shoes by Paul
Paul
Simon.
Simon, Vaseline
Vaseline
on
on.
his on the soles of his feet. Yeah, there you go. No, I that's weird. I have to jazz myself up, and I just will kind of okay. What do I want to listen to today? What do I want to listen to today? So I'll kind of go back through my history and put on a video, and then look down the suggestions and see what I haven't listened to in a while. Oh, I ain't heard that in a while. Just put it on. But it could be anything from Brian Setzer to well, today it was Billy Idol. Yes, the Rolling Stones, Beatles, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So who knows? I mean, I just go all over the place with it. But I got to get myself pumped up and jazzed up and ready to go.
Talking
So,
about I guess like what Linda I guess vibing off of what Linda said, Eloy's got issues. And in terms of like let's say saying something weird or
mm,
something that's not quite this or that or whatever. Um some things are just being silly and this and that. But it made me recall there's a clip online where it's Jim Carrey
Okay.
and he's going into some sort of award show, and as he walks through the red carpet or whatever, there's that a lady interviewer, and she asks him, so what do you think of this evening and this and that, and I'm paraphrasing all of it, but he goes with his stupid jerky exaggerations. He says, well, this is really all meaningless now, isn't it? For goodness sakes. And he keeps going, like the lady's trying to get some, and he's trying to break the fabric of reality. um like everything's meaningless, and he says to her, and you don't exist. I don't think you exist, except maybe for a pretty scent that I smell, but other than that, you're probably not real. and and so that interaction, although he may or may not think he's being cool, he might be naturally just burnt in like a burnout,
Yeah.
which is probably likely. But I don't find it, maybe at this age, I don't find it cool at all. I find it pompous. His
Yeah.
interaction with the lady in that setting, she's trying to do a job, obviously, because he was basically expressing something to the effect of like, popularity, wealth, riches, acting, everything is fake, and he's just made this discovery, and he's the one that holds the sacred tablets of knowledge and wisdom, that everything is fake, and there's something pompous about that.
Well, it's pretty easy to say when you've already got yours.
Exactly.
You know, it's real easy to say when you're already there. But
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, I'm in 100% agreement with you when you talk about it being pompous and pretentious.
Yeah.
And it's just like, dude, is there anybody who really doesn't know that the whole world of Hollywood is fake? It's all for show.
Yeah.
But that's what it's supposed to be. And you know that going in. I mean, you're talking about, think about it, you're talking about an industry that is built upon and based upon people pretending to be anybody other than themselves.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all plastic, it's all tinsel, it's all glitter and gold, and nobody sees the tears, but that's what it's supposed to be for. So
So I remembered a few things that I've seen from the past week. One of them is the grandson of one of the three stooges, the chubby one.
Curly, okay.
Yeah, Curly. He's got a YouTube channel
Okay.
with his family members that are also ancestors of the Three Stooges.
Okay.
They dress up like them,
Oh
and they
god.
do the skits in color. And there was one episode where he went to visit his grandfather's grave
Okay.
out in L.A., and all of them got together and this and that, and they visited the grave. They were Jewish, by the way.
Okay. Yeah, the Howards, yeah.
Yeah. Um, and so he goes through the thing, and you see like all the little pebbles up on the thing, on the tombstone or whatever, and they just go through the motions of this and that, and it is something to watch, to see these people, because they're literally the the
The
offspring
descendants, yeah.
of the Three Stooges, and it's an incredible thing to see.
Do they do it well?
So slapstick doesn't work in today's world, in terms of, you have to suspend disbelief, and you have to become innocent.
Yeah.
You have to have a 1950s, 1960s, and earlier sort of like outlook in order to appreciate what's happening, but they do it well if you take that into account.
I don't know what I think about that. I think some things need to be left alone because I agree with you that you need an earlier mindset, that you have to have some sort of a I hesitate to say backstory, but there has to be a background there. You have to get it. It has to be taken in context.
Yeah.
And the times have just changed, and I think that is, it had its day, but it's more or less over. Like I can't see another group trying to redo the Marx Brothers movies. I can't see anybody trying to be the new Abbott and Costello. I just don't think it works. That was for a certain time, and the whole thing about, even if they are the descendants, the whole thing of somebody trying to redo the Three Stooges or reinvent the Three Stooges, to me, is kind of cringy.
Well, they're doing it straight up though.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not even trying to reinvent it. Like they're literally dressed up like them.
Yeah.
So it's a tough. I watched it, and for what it is,
Mm-hmm.
again, you have to suspend disbelief and become innocent in order.
Yeah.
You
I,
just
I
have to.
I kind of agree with that. I mean, if it's successful, if they're being successful, great. I'm happy for them. I really am. But to me, I don't know. There are just some things.
And they look like them, by the way.
Do they really?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you know.
Like they look like them.
Hmm.
They look like them, like a lot. I mean, it's not the same people, obviously,
Yeah.
but boy, they sure do.
Yeah, I don't know, man. To me, that was kind of like, I know he sat in with them, but it would be kind of like putting Led Zeppelin back together and calling them Led Zeppelin with Jason Bonham on drums. I'm not saying he's not a good drummer, but he's not John Bonham. It's not the same.
Yeah,
Now, they could do it, and I'd probably buy the album any damn way. But something back there in the back of my brain would still be going, that's not John Bonham. That's not Bonzo, man. It's kind of like AC/DC with, who was it? Axl Rose doing leads. I mean, it just so isn't AC/DC. I'm sorry.
yeah. I mean,
It's kind of cringy, but
yeah.
you know. Jim Dockerell just brought up something. We have talked about it before. They could never make All in the Family or Blazing Saddles again these days. We've talked about Blazing Saddles. Oh boy, it must have been a year and a half ago, because I saw a video a guy made reviewing Blazing Saddles and talking about it. And it was called "You Couldn't Make Blazing Saddles Today." And the subtitle was, "But Why Would You Want to?" And he goes to great lengths in this video talking about the entire purpose of Blazing Saddles and what it was meant to do, and how it just basically ended the Western genre and changed Western movies forever. The movie genre is still there. I mean, you have films like Unforgiven, and several other westerns that are fairly recent.
The ones that you have no idea that you have no idea about.
But Tombstone, and I mean a whole bunch of them.
Your catalog stops at 1989.
Well, still, but what I'm getting at is after Blazing Saddles, the movie genre was still there, but the TV genre died.
Yeah,
Before Blazing Saddles, I mean, you had Bonanza, you had Gunsmoke, you had a bunch of different westerns. Of the top 5 TV shows in prime time, 3 of them were westerns,
yeah,
and they always portrayed the Old West as this wholesome, clean cut place. And Blazing Saddles basically exploded that entire myth that
yeah,
it was this wholesome, good guys wore white hats and bad guys wore black hats type of mentality, and showed it for what it actually was: the way people spoke really coarsely, the way people were belligerent and behaved, and the lawlessness of areas that weren't, quote unquote, in the United States, just out in the territories. And within 6 months of the release of that flick, the TV Western was on its death spiral. So it did what it did and did what it was meant to do at the time. So, and it's the same thing with All in the Family. It illustrated absurdity by being absurd.
Yeah.
It also illustrated, I think, to me anyway, let's see what you think. To me, it illustrated how we handled those kinds of things back then. You know, we watched Archie Bunker and we watched George Jefferson. Archie Bunker didn't like black people because they were black. George Jefferson didn't like white people because they were white. But how did we handle it? We didn't handle it by writing to the networks and trying to get rid of those TV shows. We laughed at it or we didn't watch. We knew that they were being absurd by being even more absurd. And by making the condition a joke, you lessen the threat of that condition. So my
I mean,
attitude, my opinion anyway, I don't know what you think.
yeah, I think that a lot of the taboo things or things that were on the edge of society culturally due to the actual real events that progressed through through American history, let's say,
Mhm.
um, to display that in those shows for the first time,
Mhm.
the way they did, um, was cutting edge, and you'd be glued to you'd laugh, and yet there was lessons learned within that. I mean, the
Exactly.
lessons, yeah, the lessons for me watching those growing up in terms of, I mean, it's difficult because it could go overboard to this is a difficult thing. So the lessons for me, just watching it, but I think I was predisposed to have those lessons anyhow because my family behaved in a certain way. We
Sure.
didn't necessarily like on the topic of, like, let's say race or whatever. It was not even a consideration or an issue. Plus, we live in Miami, and there's
Uh-huh.
all sorts of people all the time.
Right.
Always. So it's not like a thing, but um, it fortified the impression of, yeah, people have opinions.
Mhm.
I didn't think this at the time, but now just reviewing it, people have different, like, things that they're set in their ways on, but people interact, and and they laugh, and so
Yeah.
that's the impression that one got. But nowadays, the last thing I'll say, nowadays, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, but there's no more trend setting over social issues in as a novelty, and we've gone from the absurd, mentions to the ridiculous.
Yeah.
So we've now gone to a point where there's you can't really make such claims and be taken serious unless
Right.
you're willing to suspend certain disbelief of what actually is
Mhm.
today. These people that do try to push envelopes today that have no way where to push, if that makes sense.
Yes.
With the new protests of the world, or of the country, better said than just the world, like, let's say the country. Um, there's no trend setting. It's only a rehashing of older
The same old tropes. Yeah.
accusations. So we're living. I'll just say this last thing. I mean, I went. I'm gonna go far off the beaten track, but it's part of the thing. At least I see the connection. Um, I've mentioned before that in the 1600s, due to Spanish dominion in Europe, the Netherlands produced many books, re-emphasizing the claims of Spanish abuses and atrocities,
Mhm.
and namely because it benefited them since they were under Spanish dominion at the time, and they fought to free themselves, and they did, and this and that. But um, those old accusations kept being repeated hundreds of years later
Hmm.
and republished and reissued and reissued.
Hmm.
And so it's become something called the Spanish Black Legend,
Yeah.
which is basically the argument that in order to crush the morale of the Spanish, and all this and that, they kept rehashing the same accusations that happened hundreds of years prior. And something similar could apply to the certain accusations being thrust upon society today, for things of which they were not participants of.
Well, let's think about that and let's go a little bit further. A couple of quick, real side comments here. Sammy Davis Jr. kissing Archie Bunker was a historical moment on TV and so funny. I remember that episode. I don't remember all of it, but I remember specifically that scene, and I remember howling. I just thought that was one of the most hilarious things in the world.
Yeah, I remember it.
And I don't know if Jim, if you remember, Sammy Davis sent Archie an autographed picture of himself, and it was signed to the whitest guy I know. Love, Sammy. And I thought that was hilarious. You were talking about lessons learned from these shows. And I think that was a good observation simply because if you remember, Archie was always the butt of the joke. He was always made to look bad,
Passe. Yeah.
yeah, outdated and antiquated, you know, that this kind of stuff needs to go away. And I took a lot of those lessons to heart without even knowing it. Of course, it was also taught by my parents, that people are people and that's it.
Yeah.
But Steve Combs also said, when we were kids, the term was rebel without a clue. Yeah, I remember that well. I remember using that line well. We knew it was a play on rebel without a cause, but this was somebody who was all up in arms about something that they had absolutely no idea about. And it was real easy for the rest of society to just kind of say, okay, okay.
There's a lot of things that happen that I guess I don't know.
Well,
Go ahead.
let me ask you this. Do you think we just take ourselves too damn seriously now?
No,
No?
I think in it depends,
Hmm.
because if you because we are two guys from opposite sides of the country
Hmm.
from certain eras in this country's history and with particular backgrounds, and we share X amount of things due to that, with variations accordingly.
Well, I didn't mean you and
But
I meant we as a society as a whole. Do we just take ourselves too seriously?
no, yeah, I know what you
Okay.
meant, but I'm fleshing this out.
Okay.
But we are not part of the youth that's appearing now and doing the things or believing the things or involved in the things that. So if you take
Word.
if you take the we,
Hmm.
it's such a broad category of
Well,
us,
yeah.
and so I couldn't tell you. Everybody's on about whatever they're on about,
Hmm.
and so there's different things. But if you think of the trendsetters that are going to be the heads of companies, and the heads of political movements and the heads of everything,
Hmm.
those are the kids that are now bitching
Right.
and whining right now. So you could just only imagine what the future is going to look like.
Well, yeah. And we're kind of powerless to do anything but imagine. I don't know. I tend to have a little bit more optimism because I know there are people who are studious and there are people who actually care and they're not hooked on vanity and attention and feel that need to get attention. Posting a picture of lunch and making sure I look beautiful in this selfie and all this other good stuff. It's all a cry for attention. But for every person doing that, I know that there's another person who is actually out there working and trying to better himself or herself or their condition or their family, you know. So I have to be cautiously optimistic anyway. That and again, another part of me, the cynical side of me, says it's not my future, it's their future to run their way. So
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I mean, I'm just
um,
observing it. I'm
yeah,
not.
you
I'm
would
not
be both.
calling. Even though what I said sounds non optimistic, I'm just really reciting what I observe,
Yeah,
um, and
and
I didn't call it negative, or well, there was negative insinuations in it,
mhm.
but um, I mean,
Well,
I don't think it was unfair.
well, no, I don't think it's unfair either. But that's why I'm asking: do you think society as a whole tends to take these things, or tends to take ourselves too seriously?
If we went down
That
the rabbit hole of that to answer
well,
that properly, no,
well,
but listen, the thing is this: if we were to actually try to answer that accurately,
mhm.
it would it would be impossible, because the problem is that since we're made up of individual people doing individual things, and there,
Yes.
so we would have to define what exactly
Well,
is
but
that substance, which is society, let's say.
you can spot trends. You can see trends.
I mean, I
Okay.
mentioned it though, right? I
Exactly my point. The trends that you're mentioning, do you think that's because, see, everybody has always had an opinion on everything?
Mhm.
You know, from the time you were born, whether you realize it or not, you've had opinions on just about everything. Um, it's just that now it's so much easier to share that opinion and make so much more noise with that opinion and direct that opinion to specific people. You know, years ago, if you thought Richard Burton was a bad actor, you were basically stuck telling your friends and family you thought Richard Burton was a bad actor. But if he was on Twitter right now, you could send a direct message to him saying, "You suck, buddy."
Yeah,
You know, so it's a heck of a lot easier to be direct with your opinion and get massive amounts of attention,
it depends.
much like we're doing right now. You
Well, it
know,
depends.
sure,
We're getting currently X amount of people that I won't even mention the number,
yeah,
but and yet we're doing our thing. So our
mhm,
voice
right,
counts for that, and maybe residuals that might happen to stumble upon it and whatnot.
yeah,
But as far as and if you reproduce this show or the similar shows and similar activities that are occurring simultaneously every day or every minute of the day, for the past 15, 20 years online, the ocean that of content and people expressing themselves that exists is so overwhelming that you know it's so, you know what I'm saying? We're not being watched by, you know, it,
no, we're
there's
not.
there's anonymity in public, even in
Mhm.
this scenario, because it would have to we would have to assume that people that aren't watching will watch, or and will, it,
But
you get what I'm saying.
I do get what you're saying, but dude, you never know. I mean, we are two people, but who's to say there isn't somebody else in um, Newark, New Jersey, doing a similar podcast right now? Who's to say that other people aren't echoing some of the opinions we have right now, and we are seen as part of that collective society? You know, and that's just here in this country. I mean, Lord knows what's going on in Canada, the UK,
No,
France, Germany.
the reason I said what I said was because yes, we're part of it in a certain way, but it's not that we're reaching the amount of
No,
people, you know.
you're right. I understand that, but we have our reach, and then these other people have their reach, and then these other people have their reach. And pretty soon, you know, you get pockets of a dozen people here, there, and everywhere. Those numbers start to add up. And it's the same no matter what your opinion is. If you love trains, you're going to tend to gravitate with people who love trains. And there's
Right.
people here in this state that do it. There's people in Michigan that do it. And there's people in Louisiana that love trains. And so it looks like a small pocket, but when you add everybody up all together just across the country, that's a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with anything else. Um, yeah, I mean, so what I'm getting at is our reach may be tiny, but that doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. And it doesn't mean to the outside observer that it is that way, because who's to say they haven't come across us because we were in their suggestions because they watched something similar.
No, I'm not
Oh, and so
even.
my whole point in all of this was it's never been easy. It's always been easy to have opinion. It's just never been easier to broadcast that opinion to potentially 8 billion people.
Yeah, potentially.
You know, that's all I was getting at.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Potentially have access to the world.
exactly. So you've heard me use the phrase the noisiest 1% several times before. I still think that that's true, that we hear regurgitated the noisiest 1%. But then again, we need to back up and regroup and remember that they're only the 1%. But I can see how that would tend to give itself artificial credence in that because they're so loud, other people start going, you know what? Yeah, that's right. And then they jump on that bandwagon. And then their friends jump on that bandwagon and it becomes true. The
Yeah.
artificiality of consensus.
Yeah, I believe that there is such a thing as people breaking through, like in terms of all this internet
Mm-hmm.
breaking through, and like throughout history. But I also believe that everything is regulated even now as we speak. So there's no reason that we should have the same amount of people, or forget us. Let's say me and my channel, my main channel.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason why I should get the same amount of views week after, slightly nudged more, slightly nudged less, but it stays within an approximation,
Mm-hmm.
day after day, week after week, night and day, and it's always a certain amount, and and it could grow a little bit less, but it's always within a spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
day again and again and again. That's the number of people. It almost feels like going out to the spigot, turning it slightly so that water comes out, but
Uh-huh.
not all the water's coming out.
Yeah.
To me, it seems like there's a control valve going on there. I don't know that for a fact.
Well, and that gets into perspective because I can see your point. If you're trying to make something a success and make it a revenue generator, a source of income, or something like that, the odds seem to be pretty much against you. But um, the reason I do my channel, for instance, and the reason we do this podcast, I think, at least I hope this is the case for you, is because we enjoy it.
Yeah, I only post videos that I only sit and do videos that I think I want to put out there,
Yeah.
um, that I enjoy. And they
Mhm.
may not be popular this or that, or they may or that, but that's not my argument here. My argument is that it's not reasonable
Mhm.
that a channel continues to acquire the same amount of viewers for
Um,
such a long time.
I
And well, no, I mean, I'm sure that brings up a lot of thoughts, but
yeah.
I'm just calling what I see.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean that I'm right. I'm just saying that I have a certain amount
Mhm.
of views, and each video has a certain amount of views
Yeah.
that are that certain amount day
Mhm.
after day. So it's not
Yeah.
just the channel. It's just
I'm in the same boat.
And although I don't know this for a fact, again, and by saying I don't know this for a fact means that it could be anything,
Yeah.
but my instinct is that they have a valve, like some sort of steampunk machine with hydraulics and steam shooting out, and they have the thing tweaked, and if something, and I'm sure, I don't know the specifics, but I'm sure something is slightly good because there is some sort of outbreak
Some
traction going on.
traction.
They
Yeah.
say, nah, let's open up the valve a little bit more. What do you say, Bob? Yeah, all right.
Well,
And then you see a little bit of an
I
increase. I think it's controlled in that way.
I
Uh,
think I think there is something to that because of course they're going to promote the stuff that's being successful or that's being seen as maybe going viral, so they can get more ads in front of more people's faces. Um, but I'm in the same boat. I get about the same number of views on all of my videos that I ever get. I don't get huge views. I really don't.
no, but I'm saying
Um,
week after week after week after
yeah,
week, the same views.
yeah.
It's regulated,
Roughly.
dude.
Well, maybe not.
So you're saying
I
around the world. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I haven't tried up anything new or different. I'm doing the same kind of thing, just on different subtopics. Now, I have a different kind of channel. I teach software and I teach a few little tips and techniques here. But I'm not trying to become the latest, greatest YouTube sensation. I don't want that. I want to try to help people figure out that they can do this. They can work this kind of software and they can work this kind of machine. It's not over their heads. So, in order to do that, I have to stay at a pretty basic level. And people learn, hopefully, through my videos to the point to where they don't need to watch me anymore and they go on and they do their things. But new people are coming into this every day and they find me. And I get emails every day from people that are brand new, saw one video and want to know how they can see more. And I send them links to this, that, and the other every day. So I know I'm getting the same number of views on average. Occasionally, something will take off that I didn't expect. But when I say take off, I mean like the most watched video on my channel has 170,000 views. To me, that's gigantic because I don't get those kind of views. I'm talking 3,000 views in a month, which is not big in a YouTube sphere. So I don't get promoted a lot and I don't expect to be promoted a lot.
Although this goes against my initial analysis or my assumption. My assumption. It's not a full. It's just an assumption. But to play devil's advocate,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm still leaning towards what I said originally. I totally feel like it's
Well,
simply a machine. But to play devil's advocate, I remember when I used to be a manager at a store,
mhm.
and I had to do the accounting at the end of the evening, and then take the money in a one of those zippy zip purses and deposit the money at the bank, acquire the receipt, and then in the morning and such and such. And I remember back then that it was always roughly the same amount of money, meaning the same amount of customers in the mall
Mhm.
would come through and purchase roughly the same amount of price. The items may have been different, but the price balanced out to whatever it may have been back then. I think it was like, I don't quote me, but I think it was like 2 grand a day or less or
Yeah.
more, roughly in that thing back in the late 80s,
Yeah. Well,
early 90s.
and I think that would probably be about par for the course. I mean, you're going to have weeks where it was slower than normal, and you're going to have weeks where it was better than normal.
Right. But all
You
I'm
know,
saying is that
but
if we have a world audience,
mhm.
go
Well,
ahead, go ahead.
but we have a potential world audience. That's the difference. I don't
Yeah.
appeal to everybody, and I know that. Also in a genre, in a field that's getting more and more competitive every week, because where I was one of like three people who were talking about this subject, I can name at least a dozen now that are doing the same type of videos in their own way. They're shorter, they're much more fast paced than mine. I see them making what I think creative mistakes, and they see me making what they think are creative mistakes. And we're kind of bouncing things off of it. That's fine. There's room for everyone. We're not in competition. I mean, a couple of these people are my friends online, but I'm not looking for huge astronomical growth. If I was, I would do a total change up. I'd be making end grain cutting boards. I'd be showing people how to do that. I'd be making these big elaborate epoxy inlays. I'm not focused on that. I'm focused on showing other people how they can do that themselves. Then I move on to the next thing. So I'm never going to get that kind of traction. I mean, if I wanted to get traction and become rich and famous, I would start making reaction videos because that's what's taking off. I mean,
Yeah, but that doesn't sound okay. Look,
see, I've been doing this since 2010, and it's kind of disheartening to see somebody who started their channel last month already have more subscribers and getting higher view counts than me. But then again, I'm not in that genre and I'm not doing what they're doing. So who am I to say?
yeah, I don't. I'm not thinking in terms of those things.
Hmm.
In terms of me personally, and all and comparing, in
Yeah,
terms of, because I want some sort of uh, benefit
yeah,
for what I mean. Everybody does, but that's not
sure.
what I'm analyzing. What I'm analyzing is that, I don't know. There's billions of people on Earth. I don't know how many YouTube users, how many videos being pumped out,
Yeah.
and yet the cream of the crop keeps in, in quotes. Like the cream of the crop is what's shown in my revolving feed,
Yeah.
which happens to always be the same
Face.
creme de la creme content.
Well,
But if I consider, well, no, but let that sink in for half a second.
yeah, I
There,
know, but maybe they're better marketers than we are. I'm
no,
not
dude,
very good at self
no,
promotion.
no, dude. Forget you and I.
Hmm.
There's billions of people on Earth
Hmm.
producing stuff.
Yeah.
We, as the viewer, are
Hmm.
watching the same cycled creme de la creme stuff. If you were to calculate out, to me, it's reasonable. Maybe there's some math there. I'm not doing math, but it seems reasonable that with billions of people with access to all the tools available and interests
Hmm.
available and you name it, that there are countless awesome channels that are breathtaking, but yet we are pocketed, in these cycles.
Hmm.
So all I'm saying is that I think that there's a valve. I don't know that that's a, well, no, there is a valve because there's an algorithm in this and that. So
Yeah.
there is,
They're
in a sense. But I think that it's completely, it makes no sense to have a channel, to me, even though I play devil's advocate, the same amount, meaning that across the world, the same amount of people every week are taking the same amount of interest, so that it balances out, so you get the same amount of hits
hmm.
at the same amount of payout rate at the end of the cycle, paying cycle. It just so happens that day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, it sits in that thing where people around the world, just by sheer coincidence, are, to me, it's too, a little too rich to believe. I'm not saying it's not. It is the
Well,
case, but it seems controlled.
well, of course it's controlled, and it's controlled by YouTube, and it's controlled by us. We had a discussion. Oh gosh, it's been a couple of years ago now, about how you keep seeing the same things over and over being suggested to you when you go to the YouTube homepage, and you wish they had a randomize button where you could just randomize. Well, go to YouTube's homepage in an incognito window and see what is offered up. It's completely different because what they're doing is they're taking the stuff you have watched and the stuff you have searched for, and it's all being thrown back at you. Now, I mentioned the word trains here a little earlier, and I know for a fact that I'm going to get suggestions about train channels, be it full size railroads that people ride on and they ship cargo through, or some guy building a model rail set in his basement because I mentioned it. That's as good as a search term. Because this is a dirty little secret of YouTube, and they finally admitted it. They don't use tags for promotion to promote your videos. They don't even, you might as well not even put any tags in your videos. YouTube, Google does automatic closed captions. And they use that speech to text technology, and they'll take keywords out of what you're actually saying in the video. So I've said trains several times. I'm going to get recommendations for trains because they also use that to target you with stuff that you're going to see in your suggestions.
Yeah.
They use that to promote.
Hmm.
So that's why on my videos, I try to talk about what the video is about right at the very beginning so that when I go in and I edit my closed captions, it's right there. It's there in plain, simple English. Then I go in and I translate it into 10 other languages so that the closed captions are available to people that don't speak English. That helps that as well. And as it sits right now, 46% of my viewers use closed captions. English is still the number one language, and it varies between French, German, and Italian as to which is going to be number two. They bounce around. So we box ourselves in by searching for certain things and by watching certain things. So they're going to keep feeding us things on that subject. Try going to to YouTube's homepage in an incognito window, and you will see almost nothing you have ever searched for. There may be the odd thing here and there, but they're doing the shotgun approach to throw everything at you because they don't know what you want to see.
Yeah. There's a video out there that talked about Google. I mean, I'm not prepared for this, but since we're talking about this, like I don't recall much of the details, but that when Google began, well, go ahead,
Mhm.
go ahead,
Well, no, I was just
read
putting
off
that up.
the
Remember when we talked about kites? Let's see how long it takes to start getting ads for kites. Yeah.
instantaneous, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, there's a video about Google, and they talk about when Google began, and the internet in general. When it began, it was like the Wild West,
Uh-huh.
with people's all sorts of things, conspiracies. It was just back to back,
I,
in just insanity.
I think
Go
I
ahead.
just watched this same video. Go ahead.
So they say at some point they realized, that Google and whatnot, that and people trying to get their items sold, that being listed at the top of the search was key. Is that the same video that you saw?
I think so. I think it's sounding very familiar.
And so, um, they go on to show in the video how it's almost impossible to get your results to pop up because there's whole industries, companies
Mm-hmm.
dedicated to sitting down and writing endless amounts of articles,
Mm-hmm.
videos, in order to push out all competition from the sites of the person looking. And so what Google has become, according to the video, and I don't think that it's too far off, um, is that new discoveries or variations get buried,
Yes.
and unjustly, due to what's happening. And so the video went as far as to say that with AI, computers can now write articles just from a few keywords, and it automates the process even further,
Right.
so that even more can be pushed out there.
Right.
Um, and so it went into all that.
Have you been getting any recommendations for tools or anything like that,
No,
or DIY stuff?
not lately. No.
No, not lately. No. Okay. Because Steve has a good point, and this is true. Part of your recommended list is also things searched and watched by other channels you're connected to. So if you are a major fan, I don't know, pick a name out of thin air. Let's pick the king there of the on the maker sphere, Jimmy DiResta. If you watch Jimmy, if you're subscribed and you watch religiously, or maybe you become a channel member and you hang on to everything he says, you're going to start getting things thrown at you that he's associated with
Right.
or that he's a major fan of.
Right. Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
why I was wondering, because you and I are kind of tight. So I was wondering if you were getting, because I've been looking at a lot of tools lately and stuff like that.
I have not.
Rick French has an anecdotal one here. Last night on my members only live stream, we were talking about a little bitty CNC router called the 3018. And it's called the 3018. The width is 300 millimeters. The depth is 180 millimeters. So they just took 30 and 18 and put them together. And we talked about him a little bit last night. Rick asked a question about him. He didn't know what the heck it was. And he got 3 ads for him today. So, yeah, they're watching. They are watching. And they are listening. But again, we box ourselves in. Every once in a while, I'll go to YouTube's homepage in an incognito window where I'm not signed into Google. I'm not signed into any of that stuff. And it's a completely different atmosphere. And I'm finding other videos that I'm interested in. I'm on a history kick here lately. But on my official channel, on my Google account, I'm still watching more or less the same things. The people I have subscribed to, when they put out a video I'm interested, I'm watching that. But not many people, on a percentage basis, not many people do that, I don't think. I think they just continue to watch what they're being fed until they search for something else. You know?
Well, they've also, so the repercussions for this kind of thing, even if you do the um incognito,
Mm-hmm.
is it depends on what you're looking for and the scenario,
Right.
because if it's something to do with medicine,
Mm-hmm.
if there's government involvement, um, then certain tags will pop up regardless of what you're trying to, you know, alternate ideas and such
Sure.
that are not favorable. So the implications could be very. So I guess the argument from the video was that we don't it's caged up, you
Mm-hmm.
know, for people, so they have a captive audience to sell the thing.
Well,
So you get you get to, you know, if you like movies, I don't know, zombie movies or whatever, you get all that. Like you get to see that, and I mean that's good in itself. But now they know to cater to that zombie movie theme and sell you zombie movie products and such.
well, not only that, but they're going to direct you to the zombie movie websites that are bringing them the most revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it is. That's what it comes down to, is the money. And that is the major problem with Google. Now, they were basically browbeaten into, when you do a search, like if you do a search for shingles for your roof, um, I will almost guarantee you the first few search results are going to be prefaced by that little word ad. You're going to find roofing contractors listed first.
Yeah,
And then from there on down, you're going to find places where you can buy shingles in your area when all you wanted to know is what they were made out of. So you have to refine your search even more, not even understanding that this is being done to you. You know, the internet is for marketing, and that's all there is to it. It's a giant sales ad, and it doesn't matter what you type in that search bar. They're going to try to link you to somebody who they get revenue from to and I'm not talking about pay to play. I don't mean, we're going to give you X amount of money, you put us at the top of the list. Their analytics look at how many ads, how much revenue they generate from ads for this place. That's going to go to the top.
I also
You
saw
know?
this thing. I don't know if it was the same video, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to say it right, but it was something to do with they make a website. They somehow increase the views either by purchase or this or that. They sell it to a big company, and that company has many websites, and then they go to the person that wants to advertise with that group,
Mm-hmm.
and they say we have X amount of views per month
Mm-hmm.
if you advertise with us. But in reality, it's just them acquiring different little
Yes.
websites that
30
have.
here, 70 there, 90 over here. Yeah.
So it's not really like they're gonna have that, but that they could, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not. So they were saying stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a lot of that. I mean, and anytime you create a system, you're going to find somebody who's going to figure out a way to manipulate that system or game that system,
Yeah,
and sneak around using certain loopholes and rules or what have you, and they're going to figure out a way for their personal gain too, to weasel their way through it. That's for sure. Frankie set up here something that I started talking about making reaction videos. He said, just start reacting to reactors reacting to stuff. It's already been done. It's already been done. There are two channels that I can think of that have started scouring the reaction video universe, and they'll pick a song, say Rush, Tom Sawyer, and they'll go check all these channels and download a copy of their reaction to Tom Sawyer. Then they edit it all together. So you've got the song playing down in the bottom corner and all these different reactors, all their reactions to what's going on. You know,
yeah.
it's being done. And I think it's kind of funny because you've got the reactors going, well, I'm getting demonetized because somebody hit me with a copyright claim, and now somebody's taking their stuff and putting it on their channel,
Right.
and it's like, hey, wait a minute, you know.
It's an endless loop.
Well, yeah, it's like, how can you be mad at somebody who owns the rights to the music for hitting you with a copyright claim when you want to hit this guy with a copyright claim because he had the guts to use your video, you know.
There's another side thing with all this is that AI.
I was gonna get
So
into that.
so and I don't know if this is all from the same video or different videos because it's all blended in my brain.
Yeah.
But they were so I think it's something to do with a conspiracy here or there. So I'll mention what I remember. The suggestion is for the conspiracy that the internet that we're watching is either partly or wholly all AI already in terms of
A good percentage of it.
production of what you get to see and this and that. I don't believe that. Um, I think that there's some of that, but I think that I can tell when a company is selling like deodorant and it's a guy in the woods and he said and there's a big bear standing there and he grabs the deodorant and stuff like that. I look at it. Well, this is produced by some hipsters trying to sell their specific deodorant from their company somewhere in Seattle and this and that. But the argument from that video in the conspiracy is that if it were all already AI, you wouldn't know the difference. You would not have the ability to know the difference either way. Out the gates, like because you're already part of it. Let's say, So it's kind of like I don't want to say the chicken or the egg type thing. There's a parallel to it, but that's what they
Well,
suggest. I don't believe it necessarily, but I wouldn't know if it were true or not if I were stuck in it. Let's
well,
say.
I can tell you with some confidence that a certain part of it is AI. And for instance, I was just talking about the automatic closed captions. That's all AI. I go back and I edit mine, so I see that they try like crazy to follow uh, exactly what I'm saying. But it, especially when you have false teeth that you're still getting used to, I slur some words. Some words are not common. And so I have to go in and edit that. I correct spelling and I correct grammar and I, try to set the timings to where what you're reading on the screen is what I'm actually saying in the video. I try to time them just to synchronize. But a lot of folks don't bother to do that. But something I've noticed over the years is that is getting better. It's making fewer and fewer mistakes. So it is learning that when I say V carve, it's not B car or V Carl or something goofy like that. It is learning that, oh, okay, this is a real thing. So let's say it the way, let's print it the way it's supposed to be said. So it does learn, it does get better. Now, it's not limited to that. Um, Chris Croft, a guy I know off of Facebook, he used what is that Chat GPT AI
Hmm.
and just did a little, put in a whole bunch of search terms and this, that, and the other. And basically, what the AI did was it gave him a 5-day plan on how to promote a wooden sign business. And it printed out this entire plan. Day one, do this, make a video talking about this, or make a post talking about this. Day two, make a post talking about this. Day three, interview customers. Day four, show the completed projects uh, in their after delivery once they're mounted. Day five, do a whole bunch of other stuff. Then he went in and asked it to write him a good 5-star review for his product. And it did. It wrote a paragraph that you would swear, because I'm like, Chris, that was AI that did that. It's absolutely 100% because it looked like a person wrote it. And it's like, well, if this computer can come up with this, if this computer network can come up with this, how much of the internet is already done that way? So could I go into this AI and just tell it I want a website article about this, and it would write me up an entire website article and I don't have to do anything? That's making me wonder how much of the internet is already done that way.
Yeah,
I'm not talking about
exactly.
photos, I'm not talking about videos. I'm talking about websites that are out there right now that may be getting millions of hits. That is quite possible the person running that website hasn't looked at it in a month, but it's
Yeah,
getting posted to every day.
and they're making money off of it.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I think there may be something to how much of the internet is already AI. I
yeah.
have
I
no
think that
idea.
there's something there. I don't know the details of it.
Hmm.
Um, like I can't prove. I mean, I can't. Like I wouldn't know it if I unless you're reading an article and they screw up. The AI
Right.
screws up, and you can
Yeah.
see errors.
Yes. But that's part of the AI is it learns from those errors because before, I mean, with this particular program, you have to say, you read through it and go, okay, few mistakes here and this, that, and the other, and it'll go through and it'll regenerate another one. And it takes what you have told it and it learns from its mistakes and it refines itself. And it until you get something that's acceptable, then you can come in the next day, or you can sit down and do about 12 of them in a day. and then you've got 12 days worth of
content.
blog posts. Yeah.
It's incredible. I
Yeah.
mean, if it's telling the right and if it's sharing the right information, does it matter that it was computer generated?
If the information is correct, I don't really know that it does. I mean, if the computer says put tab A into slot B and you're educated in the subject and you know that yes, tab A goes into slot B and it goes down the list and says to do this, I don't think it matters that the computer came up with that, so long as the information is correct.
Okay, so yeah, so we're aware. So I want to lead into this since we're talking about the AI. There's an island somewhere in the Pacific, somewhere
Mhm.
out there that's disappearing.
Okay.
It's like a long strip type nation.
Mhm.
It's a small nation with actual people that live there.
Mhm.
And within the next 10, 20, 30 years, they say it's going to be completely underwater
Okay.
and they'll be gone. The nation has begun to capture everything as the island looks like now
Uh-huh.
into a digital format so that the people can visit it virtually
Mhm.
into the future and see the culture and the people so that it won't be lost.
Right.
And government is moving all of itself into the digital world and it's going to become the first fully digital nation,
Virtual nation.
virtual nation, because the island itself will be gone, but they're actually tracking like with cameras all the vegetation so they capture
Yeah.
like so you can take a virtual tour and stuff and you can have visits to the island and learn about their culture because it is disappearing.
I now I'm on board with that part of it. I'm on board with that. Where I kind of went, huh, is how can you be a government of a place that no longer exists? Now, if you're going to curate those digital files and run it like the Internet Archive, let's say, then that's one thing. But you're no longer a governor or a president. You're now the webmaster. To me, my opinion. I mean, if I lived on that island and I pick up my family and I move to the next island, which is another country, I'm no longer under that person's authority. So, I mean, you can be governor of a bare spot of ocean. That's
But
fine.
they want their country to continue to exist.
Well, yeah,
So they're
okay.
transferring it in that way so that it will perpetually have
Mhm.
um, a presence even though it is digital.
And
But
I'm on board with that. I'm on board with that. I think that's a cool thing to do.
I mean, I don't know all the details, but I did run across that and I found it very interesting because I mean it is. But if we take that in a different direction, but still within the same framework of like computers, AI, and this and that, if there was a technique that came along in the next few years on par with what we're talking about, where they could take you, Mark Lindsay, scan you
Hmm.
back, front, everything, facial expressions, voice, everything, digitize you into the internet, packaged with all the your informational history in terms of your likes, little sort of like tit for tats on, one thing that you favor over another, like just as much information about you as possible so that you become a digital Mark Lindsay. Would you do it?
No, no. I mean, I might do some things just for the cool factor of it, but that I don't really have any kind of interest in that. And that is not a new premise. I mean, I can remember it was a TV show years ago. It was kind of like a backup to the Twilight Zone. It was called. It was hosted by Rod Serling, and it was called. Oh my gosh. Um, Gosh, now I can't remember what it was called. It was in the 70s, and basically they did that with a newscaster. And at the end of it, they basically killed this newscaster because he was no longer necessary. He lived in the TV. And they didn't have to pay him. He never aged beyond where he was right then. And he would say anything they programmed into him to say. So they
would
no longer needed that newscaster. So they killed him.
would that Mark Lindsay that's digitized that you said you wouldn't do,
Right.
but if you were to, would that Mark Lindsay, how much of that digitized Mark Lindsay in your reckoning
Mm-hmm.
would be you?
None of it. It would be a reasonable facsimile, but it wouldn't be me. Um,
Let's just hold on for half a second. Let's just hold on for half a second.
mhm.
And by the way, I agree with you, but I want to clear this up,
Okay.
or I want to sort of brush under the carpet or under the table to see what lint and dust we can stir up.
Okay.
I mean, not
Sure.
quite, but so I agree with you. It's inconceivable to me, and you tell me if this is where your thoughts went, and I'm sure there's other thoughts that went. It's inconceivable to me that anything that is like if they took a scan of me,
Hmm.
and I wish when they did take this. By the way, I wish when
Yeah, if they could, make me a little thinner, a little younger,
yeah, yeah. So
make
there's
the
that
make
too.
make the beard not so white,
Yeah. So there's a few details there, but putting that aside, they take a scan of me,
Hmm.
and like let's say I digitize volumes of like my history
Hmm.
from the beginning of my existence, my
Hmm.
my family history, myself, um, and it would have to be terribly embarrassing because you'd have to in order to make it as accurate as possible so that that clone would have all this data,
Hmm.
um, and then they produced the clone into
Hmm.
the computer world of Eloy, let's say.
Uh-huh.
Now it's a digitized Eloy. I agree with you that all that added to it is still, from my perception, not quite what's inside of me.
Right.
But here's the twister. Here's the twister. Um, for people out there, like let's say for Steve,
Hmm.
for Jim, for Frankie, Rick, Linda, everyone out there, if they were to come across the digital me or the digital you,
Hmm.
that thing that's inside of you
Yeah, they
that
wouldn't know.
they don't know it.
Right.
They see the expressions of it,
Right.
but that's something that's you, that observer, that emotion, that all these things isn't quite you can't quite grasp it.
Yeah.
But to the external observer looking at you, it would probably, because he would talk like you,
Hmm.
he would make jokes like you, roughly at the same level of frequency as you. He would have every single thing externally thereabouts. People could recognize, oh, this is the digital version of Mark.
Hmm.
But for them, in a general sense, the good enough is pretty darn good enough in terms of that missing part that's actually probably the most important part, the observer in you and me, the
Mhm.
observer that feels, the observer that ponders, the observer that doubts, the observer
Well,
that frustrates, the observer that interacts with the universe through this outer exterior thing, that consciousness
mhm.
is not, you can't, it's kind of like you can't
Yeah,
grab it.
you're an avatar of yourself. Basically, that's what it is. It would be an avatar, and basically that's about it. Because you're right, we can change. We can do things that are a little bit different. Would the digital Mark Lindsay, agree and and yep and kind of cut in when you're speaking the way I do? Maybe not. It might just sit there and occasionally move just so folks like you
No, no,
don't
but
think
think,
that the screen is frozen.
no, no, but
But
think
but
reproduction
I'm
all
not
the
done
way.
yet. I'm not done yet. It would learn, and it might start doing that. It might adopt more of my mannerisms. Hell, it might even know what clothes I have in my closet based on what I've worn in the past. It wouldn't know what color the pajama pants I'm wearing right now, but that's about it. It would know me from here up unless I had a total body scan in everything I own.
Let me just
So,
interject.
uh,
You pre creating that avatar,
mhm,
you would have, embarrassingly so,
mhm.
laid out the framework of even the most intimate details.
Yeah, see, that
That,
ain't gonna happen.
no, but
I
just for
get
the
it.
exercise, just for the exercise of it, you would have revealed all these things that are embarrassing to the individual as an individual. We're all human beings, so there's a window there of that everybody has stupid things. Do I put my finger up my nose every now and then? It just, there's a bunch of things, but the computer would then have all that.
Right.
All your
Well, yeah,
qualifications.
I get it. I do get it, and that's one of the reasons why I'm just not interested. Real quick before I come back to what you're saying, Jim, no, it wasn't Max Headroom. Max Headroom was very, very similar. It was a similar story and similar storyline. The the Rod Serling series I couldn't remember was called. I just lost it again. Night Gallery, and that was during Night Gallery ran from 69 to 73, and it was one of those in one of those series. Um, but see, the this subject is being debated right now amongst the folks that are involved in AI in the background and in the foreground. And how far do they want to go? Because AI is a big blanket term. It's like saying woodworking or cooking. There are specialties. There are a lot of AIs that are concerned with text only. That's all they're interested in. There are others that are concerned with imaging. There are others that's concerned with audio, and some that's concerned with video. So, there are varying specialties involved in all of this. I can see where you're going. I'm not going to say it can't happen, and I'm not going to say that it won't happen. What I'm saying is, I think it would go through a cycle, much like the DNA test thing did. DNA tests exploded a few years ago, and it was the trendy thing to do to get a DNA test and post a video with your DNA results. And for 90% of the people who got a DNA test, that's as far as they went with it. They didn't care about a tree. Maybe they set one up on a website or something, but they really aren't all that interested in tracing their family. They're not interested in genealogy or anything.
Yeah.
I think the avatar thing, like you're talking about, would more or less be the same. I think a lot of people who didn't know what they were doing or didn't know anything about it would dive on it because it's cool. I think maybe some people who do know about it would do it. But I think more people who know about it would avoid it like the plague unless they were forced into it.
Yeah, like everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Under any topic, that's true. But my
But
going back to go ahead, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead on.
No, my going back to it. So if they could, so if imagine that with this AI representation of you, um, it would be in its program. Like you would sit and have a full template of all your things, right?
Mhm.
Ad nauseum to to the nth degree. So things like, you know, using myself as an example, you know, every Wednesday I tend to think about back when me and my family used to sit and have dinner, and the mug was such and such, and my grandmother would always tell this joke, my grandfather, and you go into exquisite detail. And so in the avatar,
Mhm.
that expression would be locked in
Mhm.
at one level so that it's cycled roughly every Wednesday at such and such and multiply that by all sorts of things. So you would have to take an accounting
Yeah.
of yourself to an incredible degree. And even then, it would not be that you could not reproduce that. Even if you tried to express the
Mhm.
you,
Yeah.
it is impossible to grasp that. But
Yeah.
to the level that it can, and to the level that the outside world, looking at the avatar of
Yeah.
you or I, to them, the level of accuracy, because they never get to see, um, we don't like Jim Dockrell. We don't know the inner. It's much more complex. Jim Dockrell.
Right.
We know. Look, so he's a human being. Jim has certain jokes that he typically goes at. He has whatever parameters that he
Yeah.
plays
He's
around
got a
with.
personality. I mean,
Right. And we observe it from the outside, what he offers us. And
mhm.
even even Jim, using Jim as an example, even Jim, although he knows himself better, that inner part, um, he doesn't know, or any of us, the perception and how it's received by others of
Right.
us. We only know our observation, the
Right.
input that we're getting from the reactions of the
Right.
things that we say, but we don't know the inner workings of other people's minds. But again, the long story short is that that reproduction of Mark Lindsay going into the future in a digital world. Imagine, I'll leave it at this. See what you say. Imagine if you forget about alternate world, and you could see your X amount, great grandfather. It's not him, but he's been accounted for in back 300 years ago. Let's say all the things that he liked, didn't like, this and that, the stories. Like he
Mhm.
sat down and produced that
Yeah.
and created this digital asset so that future generations could see. And then you go in one day, you go in to type in, and you go in, and he's sitting there, and you say, well, great grandpa, you know such and such and such and such. And he says, well, back in the day, I remember the blades of grass along the trail.
Yeah.
And so you're getting all this stuff that, even though it's not him, in terms of
It's
that.
his story.
Right. And you're getting the visuals of it too. So it's a fine line between real it's a fine line between things that I can't even put my finger on.
Yeah. I get it. I mean, the it is mind boggling, and where this could go. It could really go pear shaped real fast, or it could go, because I mean, let's be honest. Humans being humans, there are certain things we are going to do with it that we know are wrong, but it's going to happen. We just know it. I mean, look at everything, every technological breakthrough we have ever had. Somebody and or some group has used it in the wrong way. We know it's going to happen.
Mhm.
And maybe making all of this stuff open source for the average Joe is the wrong thing to do. But who's to say the cure for cancer won't be found this way? You know, who's to say that the benefits could seriously outweigh the negatives? you know.
Just imagine that, Mark. So let's say a great grandparent of yours from 1813,
Oh
eighteen
yeah.
fourteen. He's so you go in and you enter, and he's talking the way he would have like, let's say if that technology was available and people could
Uh-huh.
sit down and do the thing, and you're listening at him to him,
Well,
and he's laying it out.
dude, in many ways that already does exist. You've posted videos yourself. You just posted one not too long ago of, I want to say it was your grandmother, maybe your great grandmother, in
Yeah,
a voice that was not hers, obviously,
right.
because you don't have any recordings of her voice to take samples of.
No. And in English,
Yes,
you would have spoken Spanish.
she would have spoken Spanish, exactly. But we already had, that's already on the way. The information that you could put into that, you had to put in yourself, right?
Yeah,
So it's limited to what you know. But
right.
if you attach AI to that and you put everything that you have found out about it and you let that AI do its searches, it may bring back things that you had never heard of. It may bring back people that you'd never heard of before. It may bring back places they've been to that you'd never heard of before. It may bring back a story of her 16th birthday that was shared by somebody else, not even connected with your family, just the remembrance of somebody who was there.
It's an amazing thing.
I mean, now we were talking about this whole avatar thing and digitizing. I found one use for something like that, but it wouldn't be digitizing me. What I would like for my personal situation would be a personal AI that would watch my emails, watch how I reply to emails, watch how I decide what emails I'm going to reply to and which ones I'm not going to reply to. And when I keep, because I get the same questions over and over and over again, just, in sparse intervals here, to be able to answer that email for me
Yeah,
to where I don't have to worry about it.
that would be an early form.
That, and I could see where that would be used. You've got a website like, Tires R Us, where somebody could type in to it, do you have this size tire? They could come back and say, we have 13 on the shelf. Would you like to book an appointment?
Yeah,
And no human has to even do that.
be
No
there.
human has to be involved in it. And just all of a sudden, boom, an appointment is generated in their work schedule for that day that you make the appointment to go in and get tires.
I see it totally happening. But I like to go back to that scenario, and I won't. I'll take you out of it because I get the impression that it's kind of, because you have mentioned that it kind of creeps you out slightly.
Yeah, it is. It's very creepy. And I said that on one of your videos, and I felt really bad afterwards
You've
because,
done it a few times. Every time I post one of
yeah,
those things that you forget the first time. It doesn't look.
well, the
It
first
does.
time I commented on it, I said, that's cool, that's awesome and scary at the same time.
It doesn't
Because,
bother me because I understand why. Because
well,
fidgeting with, it's fiddling with nature. Let's say.
no, it's because if you can do that with her, your relative, which I think is awesome. I really do. I think the whole concept is cool.
I'm not the only one doing it.
I know that. How easy would it be for somebody to do that with your picture?
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's why I said it was scary, because we're opening ourselves up for manipulation. And the one where I said that's both creepy and awesome at the same time is because for some reason the hair on the back of my neck, when I had hair on the back of my neck, I just got a haircut, it stood up and I just went, oh man, this is really something.
So look, let me just get through it, and I'll use myself as an example. Although I prefer yours because I can imagine. It's kind of like playing D&D, but I'll use myself. So imagine if I could go in and sit down, open up the thing, and I go in, and my umpteenth, my so forth, great grandfather appears. That's if they had that technology, like in an alternate universe
Yeah.
where they did have the ability, and now I'm born like 400 or 500 years later.
Uh-huh.
Like, let's say, like, or looking into the future, someone that's your
Yeah.
descendant, they come in and they see you back in 2023, let's say. But in this case, let's say going back to one of my
Yeah.
great, you know, and I'm there in that little hamlet, and he's sitting there in his house, and I say, well, tell me a little bit about, the past, because he would have sat down and everything we've talked about, inputted it, and the metrics and the whole thing. So you're getting roughly as good as it gets, other than if the person was there.
Mm-hmm.
The visuals, the cheek
Yeah, I get
twitching.
it.
And so he says, well, come with me, Eloy. Let me show you. And we walk out, and he goes over to the side of the inlet, the ocean there. And he says, you see this church here? In the future, this church is no longer going to be here because it's now in ruins, but here it is as it was in my time. And this has been around since the 1300s.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Oh,
he walks in and he says, and over here is where this marriage occurred, and so on and so forth. And you know that in a few weeks from,
no doubt it
18,
would be awesome. No doubt
exactly.
it would be amazing.
Would you participate? Like, would you, if, let's say, all things being equal, right now you could go in and it was already set up anyhow,
Mm-hmm.
and you could sit in front of that great of yours and
Would you
witness
bet I
that?
would?
Would you avoid it, or would you go and see?
Oh, I'd go check it out. There's no doubt about it. Would I be the person who would get scanned in and do all that stuff? Not voluntarily. We've already talked about this. That's kind of sort of what this is. This
You
is
wouldn't volunteer?
no. Why
And
would I
why?
do
What's the
that?
objection? What's the objection?
They're numerous, too numerous to count.
What's the
They're too
objection?
numerous to count. I
No,
mean,
no, but
everything anybody needs to know about me, they're finding out right here.
oh
Because
wait,
see, what the information that I want to pass down to my family is already it's being passed down.
but there would be an algorithm within the thing where it would lock out. Like, once it's compiled, it would become such an encrypted thing that that personality template or whatever technical thing it would be congealed into, hey, that's it. So there's no way
But,
of extracting. Oh, so
well,
so
then, but
so
then how could
Mark
it
had a
learn?
chocolate tooth, and or just whatever.
But how could it learn if no more information could come in? Because it doesn't have to. Nobody has to get into my avatar to change it. They can just throw something else out there on the net, and
No,
that
no,
would be absorbed.
yeah, I'm not. So
So,
I get your
so
wig.
yeah,
I get your
that's
wigged out with the whole. I get your
yeah,
wigged out with the whole thing.
yeah.
Let's see what people are saying about it, if they are
Okay.
saying anything.
Well, let's check it out here. Well, first, Steve says you're acting like all that info isn't already being compiled and stored. A great portion of it is, but not what color pajama pants I'm wearing right now.
Wait a
So,
second. Hold on. The color pajamas you're wearing, by using all algorithmic variables,
mhm.
is a CNC print boxer shorts.
Wrong. I don't own any boxer shorts.
Oh,
No, I
okay.
take that back. I take that
Brazil.
back. I take that back. I own two pair. Bonus points if you can guess what print they are.
No. Hold. Hey. Okay, sorry, it wasn't the boxer short. Wait. It's a Brazilian man G string.
Got it on the first try. Yeah, right. Did you? I why would I subject anybody to that?
No, but that's another subject, and
Mm,
I'll never understand it. But let's move on. Let's continue.
yeah,
To me,
exactly.
there's no room for, well, whatever. Let's continue.
Linda says, and I ain't telling. Let's see. Jim Dockrell says to replicate me digitally would be a complete waste of time. No, Jim, you're already being replicated on every video you post on your channel. That was my point on this. No, it's not a three-dimensional avatar. It's not a hologram or anything like that. But basically, my
Likeness.
voice, my mannerisms, my appearance, the fact that I can't seem to get rid of this reflection in my glasses, all that is being digitized right now as we speak. So,
Let me just, before you move on to the next thing. So
mhm,
it's true. If you compare the fact of what you do have and participate in
mhm,
digitally, video wise, instructional, your thoughts and such. And
Yeah.
it's still, well, I can't even say it still is kind of like it cheapens it. Um, it, in contrast to what we had just a few years ago across the way, where here's just a photograph,
Yes.
is a huge jump across the ravine.
And before
So,
that, just nothing but paintings or sketches.
and sketches. So, in terms of that, you're right. So, like, you could, in theory, say, well, dude, we already have video. But in the absence of what I'm saying, you could
Oh yeah.
say that. But with the introduction of something theoretical of what I'm saying that doesn't seem too theoretical, kind of seems like a
Oh, it's
possibility to one degree or the other in the future at some point. But if that introduction occurred, you would have people adopting that, to whatever degree. I agree with you that most people wouldn't adopt it like
mhm.
anything else. Most people are like either creeped out by it, concerns over, all sorts of things, but there will be a a a progression in that
Yes.
direction for
And
people.
enough people will find it cool that they'll want to get on board.
Right, but you are right. In terms of, and Jim was saying, I just wanted to answer because this was part of the Jim, but he said,
Um, to replicate me digitally would be a complete waste of time.
okay, so he's just being funny
Mhm.
there, but you can't say that.
We are only meant to occupy this reality for a certain amount of time. After that, it is time for the next generation to take it from there.
Look at this. Look at Jim making proclamations from the mountain on. Jim making proclamations. How do you know that's the case, Jim?
People my age have not been understanding the youth of today since there have been people my age. Yes, you are absolutely right. Gosh, I'm going to have to go find this clip. It was part of a long um, show. And part of it was a quote that was talking about youth today. They don't understand. They're going off half cocked. Their heads not screwed on straight, and they just this and that and the other. And the quote was from ancient Rome.
Oh yeah, yeah. There were
So
two guys sitting on a bench, and they're saying kids today are incorrigible. I'm paraphrasing.
yeah,
Can you believe it? We're
well,
going. Rome is going to heck in a
well,
handbag.
yeah. This is in a text from way back in the day. I mean,
Mhm.
from way back then.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy hell, some things will never change. So
Oh no, they were totally.
you will get no argument with out of me.
But did you see how Jim? How can he make such a proclamation that we are destined to, and then move on, and then this? Even though that's consistently true, but if something came
Yeah.
along, Jim, something came along, and I can put your head in a vat. How tempting is that? They
Futurama.
they'll even have a glass cleaner that comes around every Tuesday, so he can equate your brain in the vat, so you can see better through the foggy water.
Scruffy the janitor.
And you'll have a ticker tape. You'll have one of those ticker tape things. It'll go tick 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 tick, so you can talk to people. Tick
Yeah.
tick 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 tick.
Yeah. AI will be used to more accurately put ads in front of your face. It already is, Jim. It already is.
Oh,
The
so you're saying
internet,
something? So you're saying something like Mark will appear with like some sort of like a jumpsuit with like brands from like all sorts of
yes,
different companies on
yes.
him.
I'll look like a NASCAR, a walking NASCAR. You
And
know,
when
the
he talks,
side, all the stickers on them.
and so when an ancestor says, Mark, could you tell us about that time when you did that show? And Mark will start talking, and within a minute it'll say, now it's time for an ad, and he'll repeat an ad, and then
No,
he'll go,
I won't even say that. I'll just segue into it. Oh, look how late it is on my new Bulova watch. You know.
so yeah, so basically you're going at it, but at the, if man can ruin it, they will ruin it.
Yes,
Yeah.
we've done it. I mean, if history is there for us to learn from, and if you go back, everything we have ever done, we have trashed it, we have ruined it, we have cheapened it in one way or another.
Could you
You
imagine
know?
how disappointing it would be though? Like, let's say in some cases, like say that this process was viable back in, like, let's say in Plato's time, and people come in to say, yeah, Plato, and you meant this, right? He said, no, I didn't mean none of that.
I didn't
I
mean
mean,
none
that
of
was
that.
all
Yeah.
junk. I was just passing the time.
All we
Uh,
are is dust in the wind.
like ruining like ruining all the things we think we've learned because now we have access to the actual source.
Well, think about it. I mean, if you got drunk one night and went down to the beach and you just wrote your name in the sand with a stick, and then magically you could come back 1,000 years from now and you found that people had built a monument around it and were more or less worshiping it, wouldn't you feel a little bit embarrassed? You know?
Whole society grew up around it.
Yeah. Did you ever see Men in Black?
I did.
You did? I think it was Men in Black 2. I may be wrong.
The little,
The little guys in the locker,
yeah,
where he opens up the locker and they're all hail K, all hail K.
yeah.
Yeah. That, something like that around your name in the sand. Be like, dude, I just wrote my name.
I mean, yeah. That's. I mean, it's a funny thing. It's a funny thing.
Yeah. Jim says, once I leave this planet, I'm not coming back if I have a say in the matter. That's if you have a say in the matter. If you have a say in the matter.
Yeah, but that's a big if too, because I mean,
Yeah.
that's on the teeter totter. What do they call the? It's the teeter totter. What do they call it? The
The
playground.
seesaw.
The
The
seesaw.
seesaw. Yeah.
That's a seesaw. That's a seesaw if.
Really. I mean, we don't know what's out there. And, and some of us better hope there's no such thing as reincarnation, because we're going to come back we're going to be punished when we come back.
You're gonna come back as the pimple on an elephant's butt.
Yeah, there you go. That'll teach you, or you're going to be that horsefly that elephant steps on next weekend. Let's see. Mark's pants are some sort of tartan. No, but thank you for playing our game. Now, they are 3 colors, and it is a plaid, but it's not a tartan.
Oh, geez, Mark. See, you would participate in this because you're giving the information away freely.
Dude, he
You're not
made a guess. I'm playing the game. I mean, you can't take all the time. You have to give back some, So if he's going to give a legit guess, no, it's not a tartan, but, you know. There you go. How do you know this incarnation isn't punishment for a past life? You don't. You don't.
You don't.
Yep. Now, Richard Pryor years ago did a thing about when he went to the Arizona penitentiary with Gene Wilder when they were filming the movie Stir Crazy. And he was trying to understand. One of the inmates was sentenced to triple life. And he was wrapping his head around it. How do you do triple life? That means that when he dies and he's reincarnated, the minute he's born, he goes back to the penitentiary. They're like, no, you remember what you did last time you was here. Come on, get in there.
It's an incredible thing. Oh, a quick, I don't know if this is true. So
Okay.
you guys are gonna have to, dare I say it, fact check me if you're so inclined.
Google it for us.
I saw a little mini thing about Julius Caesar,
Mm-hmm.
and in this little mini thing, and I don't know. I'll have to like really check it out, but maybe some of you guys know. Julius Caesar was caught somewhere off the coast of Africa or something like that. He was imprisoned on a ship as a slave. He had the complete time he was on that ship was arrogant, bossy, and they said, well, we're going to collect X amount from you. And he laughed at them, said, you have to raise the price on that one. So they were very cautious to keep him alive because he was worth a lot, but he treated the actual pirates very badly. When they finally made the trade, Julius Caesar went into Rome, gathered a group of Romans, went out, hunted down the pirates, took them took them back, and crucified all of them.
Yes, I've heard that also. I've heard that also. Now, it's being reported as fact. I don't know,
I don't know.
but it is being reported as fact that yes, they had him tied up again, held prisoner on this ship, being held for ransom, and he kept screaming, "When I get out of this, I'm going to crucify you." And they just,
Yeah.
yeah, ha ha ha. When I get out of this, I'm going to crucify you. And sure enough, he came back with a legion and crucified them, every one of them. It's good to be the king or the emperor, whichever. But yes, I've heard that story several times too.
Very, very interesting story. I
Yeah.
had to share it. But well, just imagine if you could sit with.
It's the ultimate. I told you. I warned you. See?
It's the ultimate. Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
ultimate. Yeah, I'm just saying. Look, obviously, we're talking about things that like the Jets. Like, I'm sorry, back in the '80s when so the Jetsons are like from the '60s, right? '50s,
Oh
'60s.
yes. This.
Okay, so I watched it back in the '80s growing up,
Uh-huh.
'70s and late '70s and '80s, as I grew up, and I understood it was a cartoon depicting the future, obviously, but it looked like the future even back then because it's like there's no way you're talking to people on the phone and it's a big screen. And so all these things that just about 40 odd years ago was just okay. Let me ask you this. Back then, you saw the same things I saw as far as the TV
Yeah.
screen and whatnot. Um, in your mind, if pressed, if you even thought twice about it back then or not, but let's say if you were pressed back then, like the Star Trek screen and this and that, even back in the 80s or earlier, you would have, if pressed, you would have thought maybe, yeah, I can see that happening in the future at some point. You didn't know when, but it didn't seem so outrageous that it made you cower under the rocks. It looked like something that, yeah, sure, why not? You didn't
Yeah.
know how it was going to happen, but so would you have, if pressed, said no? That's absolutely so incredibly
No.
weird,
I never went that far. I just some things I was like, oh, that would be cool. Oh, that would be neat. You
right?
know.
But
Yeah.
you never were like, oh,
No,
a
because I understood that
communicator.
no, because I understood it was fiction. I
No,
understood that this is a made up story.
no,
You
but
know,
was it so? Oh, no, I know that you understand. Okay, what I'm getting at is that the inevitability of it happening,
I never even thought about it.
you didn't think about it, but I'm
No.
saying that you can't go back in time and ask yourself. But if you could imagine yourself back then, if they said, "Well, dude, do you think eventually this is going to be possible?" Although, would you have been, "No, it's
Nah.
impossible," or would you said, "Yeah, maybe," or what would have been your response
Cool.
if okay, okay, like
Cool.
not doubtful?
No, if somebody said that that was going to be happening in about another 30 years,
No, no, no.
I'd have
If
been,
they
I'm ready.
no, if they asked you, Mark, like back then,
Uh-huh.
Mark, this at some point is going to be a possibility, right?
Hmm.
Would you have said, "No way, dude," or would you have said, "Well, maybe," or like, what would you
Oh,
have
I'd have
said?
said, well, cool. Get on it.
No, they're not. Dang it, Mark. No, they're
I'm
saying
see. I'm not giving you the answer you want to hear. That
no
was
because
because I didn't get into technology. I didn't care. I was a kid.
no, because he's not telling you that that's going to be a fact. He's saying that. Do you
I would
think
have just said, okay, cool, great.
no, the question you can't answer that question like that unless you don't want to answer the question within the question is this.
Would I have doubted it? No.
Right. That's the question. The question is, Mark, do you think that this will happen in the future?
Sure. Sure. Why not?
Okay, so you would have thought that, yeah. So I
Sure.
wouldn't have
Why not?
doubted it. I wouldn't have doubted it either. I wouldn't have known when it would have happened. But like you, I would have said, this is not necessarily something outright. Now, if they asked me about like the Star Trek,
Mhm.
uh, like the thing,
Beam me up, Scotty.
yeah, that I would have said, dude, I don't think so. I can tell you right here, right now, that I would have said I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would have been with you there. Yeah, I don't think so. Maybe in 2,000 years, but nah, I don't think so.
And the flying cars, I kind of also would have been like a little bit no, to be
I'd
honest.
have well, I'd have been on board with it, but I knew it wouldn't be a reality in my lifetime.
Yeah, because it's that's a lot of responsibility,
Well, not only that, that's a lot of technology that just plain and simply does not exist.
even to this day.
Yeah. So, yeah, Rick French here talking about the old James Bond movies with the unbelievable
Yeah,
concept of watches that were also phones.
yeah.
Even I own one now. Yeah. I remember, oh my gosh, was it Live and Let Die? The very beginning of the movie. He lifts up his watch and the camera focuses in on his watch and it's just a black screen. And he pushes a button and the digital time pops up in red LED. That was just unbelievable at the time.
Yeah,
But we're talking about the early 70s,
that's right.
73, something like that. And they did come out later that same year or early the next year. And they had a real short time span. Then LCD watches took over. And I remember people wearing those watches with the black screen with you had to press a button and it lit up the time red.
Yeah,
But they didn't last very long. LCD took over, and then that was the cool thing.
yeah.
But yeah, it was
Was it
tech.
LCD?
Well, no, they were LED, and then LCD basically took over
Because I
because you could
remember the
just look at it and you didn't have to push a button. You could look at the time, check the time. That was the number one complaint. Talk about first world problems. I got to put down whatever I have in my other hand and push a button to see what time it is.
I can't tell you how many watches back then I owned
Yeah,
that had so many buttons
yeah, that was a thing for a while too.
that I didn't know what half of them even like. I didn't take the time to sit and learn the whole thing because at the end of the day, all I wanted my watch for was to
Was to,
tell the time.
yeah.
So, but it had all these other functionalities, and it was like this,
I remember a kid having his watch taken away from him in math class in junior high school because it had a built-in calculator, and you weren't allowed to have a calculator in math class. Just a few years later, they were mandatory. You had to have a calculator. But I remember the teacher saying, "Let me see that watch." The kid lifted it up and he says, "Okay, give it to me. You can have it after
it's
at the end of
so,
class."
isn't it right? Isn't it so abusive? I never. I just want the answer,
It was
man.
it was seen as cheating.
I
You,
just want
you
the
you're
answer.
letting a
Don't
calculator do it for you. You need to be able to do mental math. You know. Yeah, you know.
scumbags.
Yeah. Yeah, Steve, you're absolutely I agree with you. People can't drive in 2 dimensions, never mind 3. Yeah, you inject that whole altitude thing in there, people are going to die. But then again, you just make that license harder to get and make it so expensive that the most minor infraction they lose that license. You know, when people have skin in the game, you'd be amazed at how responsible they will be. Like if you put and I think we've talked about this before, if you put an 8-inch spike right in the center of your steering wheel, pointed right at your face, you will be the most careful driver in the world. But because we got crumple zones and airbags and seat belts, people drive like crap and
No,
run over everything and everybody because, yeah, I'm safe.
or if you go over 60 something, the ejection seat, the hatch flies open and launches your ass out the car.
No, because then you've got an unpiloted vehicle at 60 miles an hour flying down the road. You know,
Well, with a self-destruct, but I mean, dude, this is now going into really scary, like dystopian. But like, it would launch the
Mhm.
person, you're catapulted to hack,
Yeah,
and then the car explodes. So never mind the people that are walking their dogs and freaking
yeah,
walking.
you know. unintended consequences. I mean, I heard somebody saying, well, how come they don't put airbags on the outside of the car? That way, when you hit somebody, it's nice and soft. And I'm thinking, yeah, but then you get collateral damage because that guy that was walking down the sidewalk, he gets hit by the airbag and gets launched through the photo mart's windows.
I've got your answer to all of that right here, right now, for all you guys.
It's that.
One word. Well, it's a compound word.
Mm.
Beach balls. Instead of using
Yeah, but
the
things
materials,
ricochet.
instead of using the materials that they use for cars today,
Mm-hmm.
make an inflatable beach ball with the interior pockets where you can walk in, and it's all beach balls. So if another car hits,
Yeah, but
that
those are
thing's
real
beach.
easy to pop.
That's why you got to be very careful. But if you do that, everything. I mean, other than falling down a ravine, just tumbling down the ravine.
There are actual rides like that where you get inside the big ball, you're in the little tube and everything, and then they just roll your butt down the hill.
I don't like that idea.
Yeah, me either. No thanks. Yeah, exactly. Strap the driver to the front bumper of the car. Cure that little tailgating problem immediately, wouldn't it?
It sure would.
Okay, we need to go ahead and wrap it up. It's been almost 2 hours. Holy cow. And to think we came in not knowing what the hell we were going to talk about, but that's the way we do it.
It's just that you can't hold us back. We've got all this stuff and it's even a secret to ourselves until the last minute.
Yep.
It's performance art.
No, I don't know about, well, maybe what you're doing is art, but me, I'm just here. I'm just here sharing my thoughts and opinions.
Are you opposed to performance art?
Yes.
Really? Why? Is it close to? Is it that whole hoity-toity world?
It's that whole pretentious BS thing. Oh, imagine a tree by the windmill down next to the brook. Be the tree. Oh, bite me. Go get a job.
I should have said, instead of performance art, I should have said spontaneous art. There's something there that I was grasping at, but didn't quite make it. It ended up with performance art. But I'm glad that you
Need I go further?
No, it's good that you explained. All right, so listen, we go live every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern and 6:30 Pacific Coast here on the Trampled Underfoot podcast channel on YouTube. And we have a website, which is the trampledunderfootpodcast.com, where you can catch our past episodes by pressing the Wayback Machine button. It'll get you into those audio shows that you can download into your podcatcher. And we also have a site over on Facebook where you could leave your ideas for the show, maybe curiosities and whatnot. And we also post things that we talk about, videos and images that we talk about during the course of the show. So you could visit us at Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook as well. And we're sponsored by
Harneal Media. You see our buddy out there, Steve. He's posting here in the chat, throwing in his opinion, which we more than welcome. And I got to tell you, there is no better way to create or increase your web presence, advertise your products, or advertise your services than with Harneal Media. I'm telling you this because I know it to be a fact. Steve is the man, the myth, the legend. If you want a website, if you're just thinking about a website, get a hold of Steve. There's a link right there in the chat. There's a link down in the description of this video. Check it out. Have a chat with Steve. He can work it out for you. That's Harneal Media, HARNEAL Media.com, the sponsor of TrampledUnderfootPodcast.com.
All right, awesome. So listen, guys, thanks for hanging out. I hope you enjoyed it. We threw out some ideas here and there. Boy, I wish, just as a final thought, if I stumble across the stuff some of the videos on the stuff that or if they pop up due to advertisement, I'll try and I'll make sure and post them over on the Facebook page as well. So
Now, I know over on the Facebook page, I already did link that video on
okay,
Blazing Saddles. You couldn't make Blazing Saddles today, and why would you want to? So if you
okay,
go to our Facebook page, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook, and you look in the little search bar for our page for Blazing Saddles, you'll find that video. It's worth a watch. It's an excellent, excellent video.
okay, cool. All right, so listen, enjoy the rest of your week. Be safe and have fun because I mean, what the heck, right?
Yeah.
Enjoy yourself. So we'll catch you next time. See you.
Peace.
Hey.